I'm Harry Beckwith. I'm joined here by Swansea fan Toby Link-Jones. Hi Toby, how are you, mate?
I'm good, thank you, Harry. How are you?
Not bad. So we're going to talk about the 2017-18 Swansea season, which unfortunately Swansea got relegated from. I'm sure you know a lot about. We're also going to be talking about your own experiences of relegation, as you tell me prior to the interview that you've been relegated from semi-professional football. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
To start with, before the 2017-18 season, how were you feeling going into the season?
Um, it hard. The relegation was tough. Swansea, we went into that season with a bit of optimism. Like we felt like we had a better team than we did the year before. Look, we were always going to be in a relegation fight that season, but I thought we'd put more into it, so it was hard to watch the boys get relegated and watch the fans because the fans were hit hard by it, especially after the takeover and everything that had gone before prior to it. So difficult times for the club, but I'm sure we'll bounce back. We bounced back from worse situations before.
So you say that you were a bit optimistic going into the season. Was this mainly to do with Gylfi Sigurdsson and the arrival of Renato Sanchez as his almost replacement?
Well, with that season we had Renato Sanchez came in and he just come off the back of a phenomenal Euros, come winning Golden Boy there and stuff. And he looked, he would have said for all the world that he would have come into our team and made us better. Unfortunately, with football, that didn't work out.
Going into the start of the season, you had two draws, two losses, and a win in the first five games, with the one of the draws being a 0-0 at Wembley against Tottenham. I don't know if you were at the game. What were your thoughts at that point in the season?
Well, obviously, the mark everyone says to in the Premier League to survive is 40 points. And at that stage, we were probably ahead of that curve a little. So it wasn't a bad start to the season, but well, as you know yourself, things just went a bit downhill, and we did struggle that season. We did. We had some good results though, but against teams in and around us, we really struggled.
You decided to part ways with Paul Clement, instead bringing in Carlos Carvajal. How did that affect the team and the fans? Were the fans on board with this decision?
Paul Clement, I think he did a good job to start with. He came in, he started to try and bring back some identity to us because that's what we'd lost in the previous years. But I think when we sacked them and brought in Carvajal, who'd done extremely well as it is at Sheffield Wednesday before us, and bringing in and it was it looked like it was a decent enough appointment. And when he first came in, obviously we had a good start to life. We had a few good wins.
You've mentioned now a couple of times the big games in Carlos Carvajal's first few.
Mm.
Obviously, referring to Liverpool and Arsenal, who you played both at the Liberty.
Mm.
What were your thoughts as the fans, as a collective, going into those games? You must have been apprehensive.
Oh, whenever you play the big teams, you especially for a club like Swansea, you don't really expect much, especially with the way we'd been playing. And yes, our form at the time had gotten a little bit better, but when they come to town, you don't really expect to get a result. We always had a very good record against Arsenal, so we felt like we could beat them. But with a team like Liverpool, you don't expect anything. And we thought once we beat those two, we'd be like, when the next club comes, don't know who it was after that, but you're like, why can't we go beat clubs in and around us? That season, Swansea weren't a bad footballing team, and that's what was all right. What did well for those big games. And I feel like with big games, there's an extra atmosphere to them, or
Mhm.
there's less pressure on them.
Yeah, I know.
But when your team's like, I remember the Southampton game very well because that was
It was almost like a
The
six.
realization. Yeah, it was a proper relegation 6-pointer. And the players just seemed nervous, and like that was a game we had to win if we wanted to stay up, and we just didn't perform the way we should have in it.
Going into that Southampton game, I've been looking at how uh, social media, uh, other factors which affect players' mental health. One of those factors which intensifies the pressures on footballers is relegation. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if you notice anything different around the club, the players' performances in the last few games that signified possibly they're struggling with the situation you were in.
Well, with when you're in and around that um, point in the table, it's um, it's always hard as a player, I imagine, because you want to stay up. Obviously, you don't want to get relegated, but the nerves, the
Pressures from the
pressure on you,
players.
yeah, it's all. And I think it just got too much for the Swansea players, because I believe we had enough quality to stay up compared to some of the other teams. But when it came to proper pressure, proper like we just cracked, and unfortunately, that's what happened. We didn't have a lot of experience really in that team, unfortunately. So yeah, it was a tough season for us. It was a tough season.
Since going to the championship, you finished 10th and then 6th. Are you happy with
Mm-hmm.
the way the team bounced back after the relegation?
Oh yeah, definitely. When you get relegated, obviously you'll sell some of your better players to raise funds. And Swansea were in a not great financial position, so to go down and finish 10th was a great achievement with the young players that we had. Specifically, like Ollie McBurney, Dan James really stepped up that season, and well, that's why they're at bigger clubs now. Um, but and Graham Potter, to be fair to him, did a great job, and I was a bit gutted to see him go. But that that first season in the Championship, I thought we'd struggle a bit more, personally. But they did great stuff. Got to the FA Cup quarter final, was it?
Yeah, quarter final.
Uh, where we should have beaten Man City. Not going to go into the offside there, but and then last season was great. The way we made our players, the way Steve Cooper used the loan market. We've been very fortunate in the managers we've had. They've been able to get some very good loan players in, specifically Freddie Woodman, Mark Way, Conor Hourihane this season now. So I think we've done well, and this season again making the playoffs. I think it's all building in the right direction for us, and hopefully in the next couple of years we can really push on.
I'm going to move on to your experiences of relegation. So,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm correct, you've mentioned that you played semi-professional football in Wales,
Yeah,
and that you.
yeah, in the Welsh Premiership.
So, tell me, the season's coming to a close. It looks like you're being relegated. How does that affect you mentally?
It's a difficult one because it was a few years back now, and I was, I was, I just turned 17, I think, at the time, and I just built, I just moved my way into the first team a little. I was on the fringes of the starting team, and at lower level football, it's hard because you get frustrated players, you get even frustrated fans, the managers get frustrated, and it's just a very hostile kind of situation when you find yourself that low. But to be fair to the boys, from what I remember, they were great. They yes, there was hostilities, there were arguments and everything as you expect because it shows that they care. But it's just tough, and like because the Welsh Prem is such like it's spread out over the whole of Wales, it's a commitment, and a lot of the boys didn't commit to it again and were quite happy to move down into the Welsh Championship, where you can play more local games. But that relegation, it was a tough one. It was and we saw a lot of player turnover, and yeah, it was a tough one. But you just have to keep playing, and hopefully we can take the club back up to where we belong.
So you mentioned there, pressure from fans and the manager. Would you say pressure is far more intensified during the relegation period in comparison to the regular season?
As a youngster, personally, there's always pressure to perform because you want to nail down that starting spot. But for the players that are like Stonewall starters, you could see that season that there was proper pressure on them, and some of them did well, some of them cracked. It's just how you perform under pressure, isn't it? But that season, because it was one of my first seasons with the club playing that close to the first team, I was always told to go out and enjoy myself and express myself, but there was still that pressure because if you made a mistake, it could cost the team, or if you made a mistake, you won't be in the team next week. So yeah, it's a tough one, and it does intensify because you just want to win.
As a semi-professional footballer, I'm presuming you get paid.
Yeah.
Would you say that the fact that you get paid to play football has it's another element of pressure on yourself to perform?
Yeah, yes, I guess, because you want to be worth the money they're paying you, I guess. But then again, like, it's a nice feeling to get paid for just playing the sport I love. So, like, it's a bonus, but it does add a slight pressure, and it can be hard sometimes because you don't perform. They don't feel like they want to put you in that team, so then you don't get paid or you don't get time on the pitch. So it is a tough one, but
going back to the Swansea situation, as someone who's been relegated yourself, do you almost feel like you've got a stronger connection to the players as they're going through that because you've experienced similar situations yourself?
Yeah, I imagine getting relegated from the Premier League's a lot harder than getting relegated from the Welsh Premier League. A lot more money's involved, isn't it? And you've got to remember with these players, like, a lot of them were Premier League quality, but there aren't too many of them playing Premier League football now, so it can affect their careers massively, and the managers as well will affect his career massively. But it's what you do after the relegation that's important bit, how you rebuild yourself, how you bounce back. And as a club for Swansea, we bounced back pretty well when other clubs have really struggled, like, for example, Huddersfield,
Sunderland. Yeah. You mentioned there's a lot more money in the Premier League teams. Would you say, I've read an interview from Michael Carrick about being relegated when he was with West Ham. And obviously, he says it was really awful, but he says that the worst bit was knowing that if they went down, the club loses money, and losing money for a club means people lose jobs. Would you say that makes it a lot harder for bigger teams rather than the semi-professional teams because you've got that added bonus or the added pressures of
right? Yeah.
more human than just football?
No, yeah, definitely. In the Premier League, like, I read the other day that Swansea have over 300 people on their books, and that's gone down from last year from about 500. And I imagine in the Premier League it was probably closer to 700. So Swansea have cut their jobs in half basically. So the money in football is astronomical. It's massive, but I think it's all down to the players. That's the thing, and there is a lot of pressure, a lot of people's livelihoods riding on those 11 players that take the pitch.
I think that's all I've got for you now. So I'd just like to say a big thank you, Toby. Hope you have a nice day. Thank you.